Now, we move into cellular development or development of life. First, amino acids require an anaerobic environment, due to the fact that oxidation will destroy the DNA chains. In fact, since your body uses oxygen for various purposes, antioxidants are necessary to repair DNA chains in damaged cells caused by the oxygen molecules. This seeming contradiction is handled by your immune system, which attempts to repair the damage, and if unable to, destroys the cell so a new healthy cell can take its place. If both of these do not occur, cancer begins to spread and replicate out of control. Returning to the more simplistic version, we are starting with, the simplest cell we know of is called Carsonella rudii, which has over 100,000 base pairs. As you see in the article in front of you, in order to replicate this simple cell's functions took 128 clustered computers, and this was only to complete in the approximate time frame as a cell that is microscopic. When looking at this in context, it becomes clear there is no such thing as a simple cell. This, the most simple cell we know of, is parasitic, meaning it cannot survive without a host to live off of. Being honest with ourselves, we have to begin to admit that life is much more complicated than random collections of amino acids. To say amino acids developed into life on their own, is like saying Mars has fully operational computers developed and made by the storm that exists on its surface. Both are ridiculous, too complicated to have been developed by chance. Of the two, DNA is far more complicated than any computer. Think of it this way, do we have computers that replicate, repair their own software, repair themselves, and self-propagate? Add this to the search for extraterrestrial life and it becomes apparent that scientists are simply fooling themselves because they want to. Microevolution, though it is not a good term for it, better would just be variation between species, is what Darwin experienced on the Galapagos Islands. Let me explain. The variations of species noted were due to the variations of foods or other materials available on different islands. Think of it this way, if a particular food supply is easier to get, or more available, with a longer beak, those birds with a longer beak will propagate more than the other varieties of the same bird, while the ones with a shorter beak will move to a place with more readily available supply of food or keep a lower natural balance with the nature surrounding them. The variation of a longer beak is no more or less than height in a human being, which provides advantages and disadvantages in its own ways. For example, someone who is tall is able to reach a higher shelf or fruit, but is also in greater danger of striking his or her head on a low-hanging branch or lamp if care is not taken. Unless someone wants to argue that shorter people are more or less evolved than taller humans. So, unless you are willing to argue the point, the only way you look at it, is that none of these things are something that did not exist before. In fact, we have a name for things that do not normally exist, genetic abnormalities. Shall we start with Hunter's syndrome? Or, perhaps, achondroplasia. There are plenty of examples of genetic abnormalities, none of which are good. At best, they make no difference. At worst, they are severely debilitating and may cause death. DNA is also very delicate. Not only can oxidation damage cause cancer and other issues, but they also require telomeres. What are telomeres? Telomeres are like caps on the end of genetic structures that prevent the ends from fraying and the genetic information from being destroyed. However, they shorten during the life cycle of cellular material, specifically cellular replication, and have to be replenished, and only are in certain cases. What does this mean? There are questions on if the shortening of the telomeres are what cause what we call aging, but to this day we are unsure. However, either way, telomeres are evidence against an evolution. Basically, genetic material is lost over time, not gained. How much are evolutionists willing to overlook in order to stuff the evidence into the box of their beliefs? As we have seen throughout the course of the previous portions of the article, any form of evolution between species is nearly impossible. One might say it would be a miracle. In fact, every time they come up with a species that is supposedly halfway in between, it is found to be a fraud. To say it may be an inevitability is just dishonest. Our ecosphere is far too complicated, balanced, and resilient for anything but intelligent design. In fact, someone much more intelligent than us, as we have not been able to implement a full biosphere, they built one in Oracle, Arizona called Biosphere 2. Each time they used it as a biosphere, lack of food and oxygen threatened to kill off the system and they have to reopen it to outside food and air. One would assume, if evolution was possible, those life forms would adapt to the conditions and reform the biosphere to what it required to survive. This did not happen. In conclusion, while evidence points towards intelligent design, even those who refuse to admit it, one further point, if I am wrong and there is no God, what harm have I done myself? If you are wrong, are you not in for a nasty surprise? The Christian religion is all about the quest to improving yourself, striving for virtues of helping others. How can anyone call that bad? Atheists can also help people, but for what cause? In a world with no God, there is no good, no evil. You might as well be selfish. What cause have you to be good, or why is being selfish not good? There is both good and bad in anything having to do with humans, from government to religion. Fact is, we have to try our best to minimize the bad, and maximize the good not with just words, but with actions. I welcome critique to my ideas, however, I will have to keep videos short due to time constraints. Thank you.